This episode's awesome. I really loved it. I'd rank it up there among the best. It totally surprised me. I thought it'd be lame, but it's almost like the show heard my request. I should probably stop singing before I strain my voice, and it's really hard to do this. Okay, I was gonna do the whole thing in song, but that would just require an insane amount of time and effort, which is what the show put into this episode. This is What's Opera, Arnold. And in case you couldn't tell based on the title, this episode's paying homage to the classic Looney Tunes episode, What's Opera Doc, where it's basically one giant opera episode. Arnold and the gang go on a field trip to the opera to see this opera called Carmen, and if you don't know, Carmen's actually a well-known opera, and they hear a bit about it beforehand, then they watch it, and big surprise, the kids start dozing off, specifically Arnold and Helga. Arnold, when he dozes off, he imagines he's in the opera and he's courting Ruth. Helga dozes off and sort of picks up where Arnold leaves off and imagines stealing Ruth away from Arnold. This episode really surprised me. I mean, there was one clue that kind of gave away that this episode was going to be really good, and that was when I saw Craig Bartlett's name in the credits. Whenever the showrunners do in an episode, it kind of has that extra oomph. Creators like the big cheese, the big talent, the gold star, the front runner, so there's going to be a above average quality. And if he's taking time to work on an episode, it obviously means a lot personally, or he really wants to put a lot in. And that's what this episode had. A lot put into it. And it truly was. It was an episode that was unique, creative out the box, and a considerable step above most of what the show's done. I've said before on these vlogs that I really like the dream sequences which happen on the show, and I love how they did an entire episode, not only an episode where most of it's a fantasy sequence, but where it's a musical fantasy sequence. And I thought that was a very, very smart move. Not only just the musical, but the fact that the dream sequence happens on stage. You know, they're not fighting in a fantasized setting, but they're fighting on the stage, they're fighting on the rafters, all that good stuff. Or when there's costume changes, they deliberately show it. It was, it's just so creative. And it was really surprising because going in, save for Craig Bartlett's credits, I really didn't expect much from this episode. Because this season, I mean, at least as far as the order they're being shown on the DVDs that I'm watching, we haven't really focused on Ruth since the Valentine's Day episode. And I thought we were done with Ruth. I thought we had moved past that. So when Arnold was crushing on Ruth again, I'm like, oh no, not this again. Really? We're going through this again? And Helga being jealous and stuff. Why are we going through this again? Thankfully, I wound up being really surprised because I was just so blown away by what came next. I'm like, I am totally okay with them just going back to this. Because I complain a lot about how the one downside to non-serialized television is characters can't grow and they have to learn the same lessons over and over again. It's a bit of a bummer, but on the other end, if you do it well and you keep coming up with great scenarios based on these repeating character arcs, it's totally fine. And this episode, I think, showed it. The singing was really good. Arnold's voice, I didn't notice this until the credits, but there was a separate, Arnold's acting voice and his singing voice were completely different. And I did not notice that until the end. And I think it's a testament to the casting of the show that there's a speaking voice and a singing voice. They're both separate, but I don't notice it until I see it in the credits. The thing about voice acting is, if you're switching actors out mid-scene, you have to get someone that kind of sounds like him so it seems seamless. And the best actors are the ones where they can kind of just jump in and you don't even notice it. In Be Prepared in The Lion King, the final chorus is Scar's voiced by Jim Cummings in The Lion King. But for the final verse of Be Prepared, Jeremy Irons couldn't hit the high notes, so they had to bring in a different actor, Jim Cummings, to do that. And they switched him out, and it's so seamless. If you listen to it, you can kind of hear it, but it's barely noticeable. So kudos to the show for being able to have two different voices for Arnold and not have me notice it unless I'm looking for it. Also, great singing voices from Helga and Curly. As far as I know, those are the original actors who voice them. They didn't get a separate singing voice. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very impressive, particularly Curly. I mean, when this show started out, I highly doubt that they knew they were going to do an opera episode. I mean, there's always a possibility that when they started this, it was in the back of their mind, but it's doubtful that they would be thinking that far ahead. Not only that, but the idea that this character who's just sort of in the background, barely gets any lines, save for one episode, was going to become a more prominent character get regular speaking roles. And not only that, but to a point where you'd actually have him have a prominent role in an episode. It's just really impressive that, you do this show, you bring on this kid to voice Curly, and you have this opera episode, and it just so happens that he's able to sing pretty well. Because Curly's voice actor really good singing. Like, in general, the child actor singing is pretty good, and I'm really curious how this worked on the episode, because, again, great episode as far as singing. And it worked out really nicely. Hey Arnold's not a musical show. I mean, it's not like something like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, or... Okay, I'm gonna back up and do something more closer to when Hey Arnold came out, like SpongeBob. Like SpongeBob, there's quite a few songs sprinkled throughout SpongeBob, so there's a good chance that when they were conceiving SpongeBob, they had the idea that there were gonna be songs, and when they cast Tom Kenny, I assume more than likely they brought him on for his voice, but I also feel like in the back of their mind, they probably were thinking, okay, if we need Tom Kenny to sing, can he sing? Hey Arnold, it wasn't a show where there was going to be songs. So the fact that you're able to get all these kids, and it just so happens some of them can sing pretty well, is a really, really nice bonus. Again, Curly, you deserve a Tony, or whatever the opera award is. And outside of this episode being really creative, it's also really educational, because if you don't know, all the songs in this episode are basically classic opera tunes, just the lyrics are changed to make them different. Kind of like what Looney Tunes did with What's Opera Doc and the Hair of the Barber of Seville or whatever. Kind of like what Weird Al does, but basically it's similar in the sense that they're taking classical music, recontextualizing it in a children's cartoon, and it just so happens that for a lot of children, this is going to be their first time hearing all these songs that are classical opera tunes. And while adults such as myself will recognize it, children won't. And what's great is that if you do your job and you work hard and you make the episode funny, entertaining, and memorable, people are going to remember these songs because they were in Hey Arnold or Looney Tunes. And then you grow up, become adults, like, oh, I remember that. That was from that cartoon I watched. And I'm an adult, so I can't speak for this, but I can assume that there's children who've grown up, this was their first time hearing the song, years later they heard the music and knew it because it was in Hey Arnold. And again, it helps also that Carmen is an actual opera, so you get to learn an actual opera by watching Hey Arnold. And it's one of those great moments where the show is able to balance being fun and entertaining and just wildly imaginative, while also teaching lessons. And it's not sitting down and just sort of walking you through it, but it's being entertaining first, and it just so happens that there's some actual facts and education. And they did the similar thing with the Bar Mitzvah episode, and it's like, I like that the show can do that. I like that it can make you laugh, make you smile, and secondarily just teach you some values and actual facts of life. And oh my gosh, the energy that went into this song, great. I mean, the lyrics they wrote for all the opera songs, I think, are very, very creative. I was like playing the songs in my head for hours after I saw it, like hours and hours and hours, and like, I'm definitely looking forward to rewatching this one. There was a lot of creativity. It's to a point where I'm willing to rationalize a lot of the criticisms I had, because initially I thought, why don't they, imagine they're in an actual city and stuff? Why is this on stage? And I thought, no, it's actually more creative to have it that way, because then you have all the stage factors. There's the bit where Helga has to change her costume. There's, again, the fights on the rafters. Just, I don't know, it's just somehow, by having it in a more grounded setting, it's more imaginative than if it was in a fantastical setting. And it's also able to do something very well, which is pay homage to something without crossing that line where you're just straight up ripping off and recycling. Because one thing I've talked about on Hey Arnold is how a lot of the episodes on Hey Arnold aren't anything groundbreaking. Like, there's been tons of cartoons that have tackled similar premises. Likewise, there's been cartoons after Hey Arnold that have tackled similar premises. And most of the time, Arnold kind of executes it the same way as those that have come before and after. This was a time where I felt like it sort of found that balance where it's definitely doing something done before, but it's doing it in a way where it's fresh. In this case, it's doing What's Opera Doc, which, again, it's paying homage in the title and the idea of just having a typical episode play at an opera format, but the specifics as far as what happens are different. So for Looney Tunes, it's just Elmer Fudd hunting Bugs Bunny. They're doing their similar shtick, but it's an opera. But with Hey Arnold, it's different in the sense that it's doing a typical Hey Arnold episode, which in this case involves the Arnold, Ruth, and Helga triangle. Again, it does enough new that it does it. Like, for one, it's an ensemble piece. It's not just two characters. The lyrics, there's a lot more songs. There's that connection to the real world. Like, there's enough different about that feels like its own thing. And at the time I'm recording this, there's a popular show that's coming back in a couple weeks called Stranger Things, which I thought was fine, but for me, it was a little too much homage, not enough creativity. Like, it was just way too much recycling the plot points of E.T. in every 80s movie, and not enough just doing its own thing, forging its own path. This, I thought, was really good at just doing its own thing, while also just throwing in your occasional reference. Like, do I even need to explain that Helga's magical slingshot is a reference to the Spear Magic Helmet from What's Opera Doc? And again, like, considering the show doesn't do musical episodes a lot, the fact that you're doing a musical episode is a major standout. And considering this is a 10-minute episode, not a 20-minute episode, the fact that they're able to do it all in 10, 11 minutes and make it all feel tight, cohesive, and non-rushed is really, really impressive. There's only one gripe I have with this. It's more not a gripe so much as a concern going forward, which is that given the fact that this episode is late into season 2 after the Valentine's episode, and given the fact that Ruth is still in the intro, there's a very, very good chance that we're going to get more Arnold, Helga, Ruth episodes. I really hope there aren't many, because again, like, if you can make them all like this, if you can make them all fun, creative, I'm totally okay. But if you don't have any great ideas, there's nothing new or exciting you can bring to the Arnold, Helga, Ruth formula, don't do it. It's a little frustrating because the Valentine's Day episode made it very, very clear that Arnold and Ruth just aren't going to work out. Not just because of the age gap, but because they're just two different people, their compatibility level 0. I mean, I could get into how Helga is probably not the best person for Arnold, but that's just not worth it. Again, the show's been pretty good so far, so all I ask is just, if you're doing another episode with Ruth, just make it as awesome as this one. Like, this is the bar. If you do not hit this bar, which is here. Sorry, I was like moving my hand up and down. But if you do not hit this bar, don't bother. Again, like, I don't have a ton of miscellaneous or continuity notes, just outside of the fact that the kids are complaining on field trips. I mean, on one end, I can understand operas are very complex. They're a bunch of little kids. It's a little sophisticated, and you might not be able to get it or appreciate. But at the same time, hey, you're getting out of class. Would you rather be sitting in an opera where you can doze off, admire music and scenery? Or would you rather be in class with pencils and paper? I always loved field trips. They broke up my routine day, get you out of class. Sometimes you get a half day, sometimes they're the full day. I don't really have much to say in terms of questions, but just, again, as always, leave your thoughts in the comments below on this episode and where you think. Do you think it ranks amongst their best? And your thoughts on the Arnold, Ruth, Helga love triangle, I guess, and your thoughts on opera, your thoughts on field trips, and was this your first introduction to all this opera music? I'm really curious to know that, along with whatever else you want to share.